Was very sad last week when they didn't have to watch any videos learning new stuff because they had to focus on their topic presentation. But we're back and ready to go again. So I'm going to go over today's lesson. We're mostly going to be focusing a lot this week on being in the computer lab because we're going to start our research for this literature review assignment. And so I'm going to do a little lesson at the beginning of each day, but then most of the time you're going to be spending actually looking for sources. But I did not, for anybody that has not seen this assignment yet, I'm going to go over it in a little bit more detail. If you've already seen this, I have changed a couple little things just to make it a little easier to understand. Made things into lists and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to update the assignment sheet in the Dropbox and on D2L, but I was just going to show it to you here. I have, originally it said Wednesday, it was due on Wednesday, but I went ahead and just moved it to Friday, so it's going to be due that Friday the 26th. But everything else is still pretty much the same. The peer review is going to be due the same day, and you'll still be doing that on the discussion board as well as possibly in class. We shall see how that works out. And still worth the same amount, same length, all that kind of stuff. But so it's 3 to 4 pages for those of you that I haven't gone over with before. 750 to 1,000 words, and it is worth 15% of your grade. Those are some dates of different things that we're going to be doing in class, so make sure you look over those. But again, the point of this assignment is not to write about the topic, you're writing about your sources. So you're going to find 3 sources that fit the criteria you're supposed to fit, and then you're going to write about how they compare and contrast with each other. So the argument, the thesis statement for this particular paper would be something like, these 3 sources agree that blah, 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 but they disagree on blah, blah, blah. And I talked to some of the students in class the other day, and they said that it might be helpful to really have a good example of it. So I'm probably going to write one of these myself. So I'll start writing one and then show it to you so you can see what, because sometimes it can be confusing when the focus you want to do is on your topic, but that's not what we're doing yet. We still haven't gotten to that point. We're writing about the sources, and sometimes it's hard to write about writing like that. So I'm going to give you an example, and I'll be working on that over the next week or so, and so I can show it to you. But you will be searching for scholarly articles, books, and other sources that are relevant to your topic, and then you will describe, summarize, objectively evaluate, and clarify these sources. Now, a lot of times people will stop here, describe and summarize. That's just basic knowledge about the sources. I want you to do more than that. I want you to evaluate and clarify the sources. I want you to think critically about them. So again, I made this very clear on here. You are not writing about your topic. You are writing about your sources. So make sure you keep your focus on what the sources are saying, what are their arguments, and how are they making their arguments. In fact, I'll probably add that on here just so you'll know. Make it even clearer. So I made this into a list because it's easier to see than in paragraph form, but successful completion will be identifying your research topic, which you've already done, establishing the relevance of the topic, you did that in the topic essay, then you're going to evaluate the credibility of the sources that you identify. So that means using the CRAP test to find out if they're good sources. Articulate the positions of the sources they identify. In other words, what are the arguments in the sources? Explain the kind of evidence presented. So how do they make their argument? And you compare and contrast. So are they arguing the same thing? Are they arguing different things? Are the evidence that they're using different, but they're arguing the same thing? So how do they compare? How are they the same? How are they different? So that is the main purpose of this, what you're going to be doing for this paper. So you're writing about the writing, which can be confusing. As I mentioned in class last week, if you start working on this, send it to me if you have questions. If you're not sure you're going in the right direction, just send me your papers, and I will tell you, yes, this is the right direction. You're doing, the way that you're going the direction you need to be. Or possibly, you're focused on the topic too much. You need to go back and look at the sources and focus on the sources. That's what I'm here to help. So just let me know. So you will practice identifying how sources are in conversation. In other words, compare and contrast. explaining what the sources seem to say to each other and together, and to quote, paraphrase, and summarize these sources. We're going to talk a little bit more about that on another day. But I'm sure you've read this, but let me just double check with the directions as far as the types of sources that you are going to be finding. This is what we're going to be working on this week. There are specific requirements. You have to have 3 sources for this paper. Do not put 2, do not put 4. You should have exactly 3. Once you go on to your research argument, the final research paper, you can have at least 5. But this one, you only need 3. So don't try to be extra and do, oh, if I put 7 sources in there, she'll give me extra credit. No, you're not following directions. Directions say 3. I want exactly 3. One of the sources must be peer-reviewed scholarly academic source. So we talked about that in the Galileo video about how to narrow down your source, how to limit your source to your search to just the peer-reviewed scholarly journals. And so I would recommend doing that. All of the sources must be found via resources available through the library. So you can't use Wikipedia, you can't use Google Scholar, not yet. For this particular assignment, everything has to either be through Galileo or through the library catalog, interlibrary loan. It could be like a journal or a book that you can actually hold in your hand from them, or it can be from Galileo. But it has to be through the library. Now, if you have something that's outside of the realm of the library that you think is going to work for this assignment, let me know. Don't just put it in there and think, she won't notice. Check with me and say, look, this is a source I really want to use. Would it be okay? And I can tell you, yes, it'll be good, or not so much. But you might can use it for your final research paper. If you find a book of interest, please do not try to read that entire book before the end of this assignment. Just pick a chapter, find the chapter that probably mostly relates to your argument, and then and use that as like an extended article, that kind of thing. So those are the sources, the types of sources you have to find, and then you're going to go on and write an essay, and we'll talk more about this as we go along, about how you're going to be building up your essay and introducing your sources, doing the thesis statement that explains what they seem to be saying, and your body paragraphs are going to show how to support your thesis statement. Now, again, this essay should not answer your research question. Do not answer your research question. That is for the research argument. That is the third essay you're writing. If you answer your research question in this particular essay, you are not following directions, and it's not going to reflect very well in your grade. So make sure that you are not, you're just writing about the writing, you're writing about the sources. You're not just going to summarize them. If I want to go read those sources, I go read them. So you're going to compare and contrast. You're going to take it a couple of steps further. You're not here to tell me whether it's a good source or a bad source. You're just telling me what they are arguing and how. And also, again, you're not reflecting on or responding to the topic. You're not writing about your topic or about the particular topic of the sources. You're writing about the writing in the sources, which again can be confusing. So if you start working on this and you get confused, just let me know, and I am here to help you. So let's look at what we were going to look at today. So anytime today there. All right, so we're talking about documenting sources and MLA documentation. So this is from your book. Just a couple of announcements. Make sure you're watching these videos for the days you aren't in face-to-face class. Doing your quizzes, those count towards your attendance and your quiz grade. Now, midterm grades are coming out in a couple of weeks, and so some of y'all might be a little shocked at if you keep noticing you're getting marked absent or you're not doing these quizzes, then your quiz grade might not, I'm just going to average out what your quiz grade is. So if you're not doing, you're not just getting counted absent for not doing those, you're also getting a 0 on that week's quiz. So make sure that you're doing those. You will be turning in your literature review thesis statements to me next Friday, not this Friday, but a week from this Friday. So make sure you got to find those 3 sources, because you can't argue what they say if you don't know what they say yet. So make sure you're looking for those. That's what the point of this class is for this week, is to find those sources. You will have an optional extra credit midterm quiz next week. So we do not have an actual midterm in this class, like a midterm test. However, I do give a midterm quiz that's extra credit. So you can earn up to 10 points that will be added. The first 10 points go towards your overall midterm grade, and the next will go on to your literature review assignment. So if you get a 100 on that quiz, you've got 5 points and 5 points. If you get a 70, then you've got 5 points and another 2 points. So it's not going to hurt you to do it. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but it can only earn you extra credit. So that's something that will be coming out next week, so week 8. So be on the lookout for that. All right, so we're talking about documenting sources in your source material. So the importance, why should you be documenting your source material? To allow a reader to follow up and learn more about the topic from your sources. So maybe I see something that a quote or a paraphrase in your paper, and I'm like, this sounds like an interesting take on this particular topic. And so then I could use your in-text citation and works cited page to find that source and go read it for myself if I wanted to. To give credit to others for their ideas. These people did a lot of work to write all this stuff, and so you need to give them credit. They aren't your ideas, they're their ideas. So make sure that you are giving them credit. To build your own reputation as a writer, so that you are giving credit to other people and you're saying like you're giving credit where credit is due. And to avoid being accused of plagiarism. That is a big one here. If you do not have in-text citations, parenthetical citations for your outside material, that is plagiarism. That even if it's unintentional, that's plagiarism, which means you would get a 0 on your paper, which is not a good thing. So if someone else wrote it, said it, drew it, demonstrated, or otherwise expressed it, you need to cite it. In other words, if it did not come directly from your brain into that paper, then it needs to be cited. The exception of this statement is common widespread knowledge. So if it's something that everyone already knows, like the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, like we know that. You don't necessarily have to cite that. So just basic common knowledge, you don't necessarily have to. But if you are ever in doubt, cite it. It's better to have too many citations than not enough citations. Not enough citations equals what? Plagiarism. That's not good. So citing sources in your paper. Always follow up outside information with parenthetical or in-text citation. Now, some people call it parenthetical. Sometimes people call it in-text. So I just use both every time. In other words, you have to put the reference information for the source at the end of the sentence when you quote or paraphrase or summarize any source information. So as soon as you finish giving me a quote or a paraphrase, I should see a parentheses and you give me the information that shows me on the works cited page where that came from. Every source referenced in your paper should have a corresponding entry on your works cited page. Now, sometimes people think, okay, well, I'll just list everything on the works cited page, but I don't really have to do the in-text citations. You have to have both. So everything on your works cited page, I better see quoted somewhere and have a citation in your paper and vice versa. If it's cited somewhere within the paper, it better be on the works cited page. Your in-text parenthetical citation should match up with the first aspect of the source listed on the works cited page. So in other words, if you're listing an article and the first thing you list is the author, if it's got an author, the first thing you should list is an author. Then that should probably be what's in the parenthetical citation. And I've got some examples of that, if it can be kind of confusing. But if you don't know the author, the only thing you have is the title, then the title should be the thing that's in parentheses after it. And we'll use some examples of that, but it should in general be whatever. If I go down the list, the left side of your paper on the works cited page, that those first, the author's name, the publishing house, the organization that put the information out, like whatever it is that's the first thing listed should be probably what's in your parentheses as your in-text or parenthetical citation. You also should be using signaling phrases for source material. And again, there's going to be examples of this. So I shouldn't see a sentence start with quotation marks and end with quotation marks. I need to know something, a way to introduce that information. So you could say, according to blah, blah, blah author's name, then give me a quote. Don't just plop it in there and without any kind of source of introduction, because it'll make it look like you're trying to say, oh, this is just information that I have. But especially statistics, a lot of people won't quote or put a citation for statistics. And I'm like, you just happen to know that 24% of people hate the color red? Like, it's not something that I can't imagine that it'd be common knowledge. So you definitely need to have some sort of signaling phrase that starts the sentence out that's according to, as so-and-so writes in their article, title of article. Something that introduces the information. It's not just a paraphrase sitting there by itself that we can't figure out where it came from. Sometimes the signaling phrase will take the place of some of the information in the in-text or parenthetical citation. And we've got examples of that. So if you use the author's name in the signaling phrase, you may not necessarily have to put it in the citation. Let's look at some examples. So in this case, the author is named in the introduction or the signaling phrase to the paraphrase. So in this case, Jacob Leibowitz found that low carbohydrate diets often help subjects with type 2 diabetes maintain a healthy weight and control blood sugar. So there's a paraphrase. It's not a direct quote. They're saying this is what he said in their own words. And then we have a page number here. Why do we not have his name? Because his name's right here. So we've got the signaling phrase, Jacob Leibowitz found. Then we got the information, and then we have the page number it came from. And then it goes on. Now, once you use, the first time you talk about an author, use their full name. Beyond that, use their last name. Don't use their first name. I see people that will put like Jacob States. That's not your friend. Don't use that first name. Use that last name. So the first time you mention them, full name. Every time after that, last name. Leibowitz states, people with type 2 diabetes should follow a low carbohydrate diet in order to prevent weight gain and unbalanced blood sugar levels. And then we have the page number again. Now, this looks redundant, right? But there's two different types of information. We've got a paraphrase and we have a quote here. So you've got to put those parenthetical in-text citations within the sentence. You'll notice that the period comes after the parentheses. So you've got quote or paraphrase, then the citation, then the period. But again, we've got the guy's name here, so we don't have to put it in the citation. So perhaps you're not going to use his name there. So here's one where it doesn't have his name. One source indicates that low carbohydrate diets often help subjects with type 2 diabetes maintain a healthy weight and control blood sugar. So it gives us the same information as this, but instead of saying his name, we just say one source. So in that case, here, it's used here, so we don't have to put it in the citation. We don't have his name in this one, so we got to put it in the citation. So it's same information, it's just quoted in two different ways. A noted nutritionist advises diabetics, people with type 2 diabetes should follow a low-carb diet in order to prevent weight gain and unbalanced blood sugar levels. So again, same information, but they're keeping the person a mystery here, but then they give it away over here. So if you use their name in the signaling phrase, you don't have to do it on in the in-text citation. But if you don't, I should, because again, as I'm looking down your Works Cited page, the first thing I'm probably going to see is this guy's name. So I need that name somewhere to know where that information comes from. Because the whole point of in-text citations is to match it up with your Works Cited page so I can find the source. So here's some more examples. What if you don't even know who wrote it? Maybe you get it from a website that doesn't have an author on it. Sometimes that happens. You have to think about that. Is that a credible source, though, if you don't see an author, but you happen to be using it? One website points out that a low-carb diet may aggravate a heart condition by raising a person's bad cholesterol. So in this case, they don't have a page number. Say it's just a web page. They don't have a page number. They don't have an author. So they just put the title of the article. And in that case, on the Works Cited page, if there's no author and there's no anything beyond that, then that would be the first thing you would see is the title of the article. And so in that case, that's what you put in the in-text parenthetical citation. If you don't know a page number, sometimes if you get sources that are like journals and stuff, even though they're online, they'll have a page number. But sometimes if it's a web page, you may not have a page number. The risk of following low-carb diet outweigh any benefits according to one researcher. Obviously, it's Jones. Sometimes it's easier just not put their name so you can use it as their citation. Gerald Jones believes that a good balanced diet is still the safest and most effective approach to good health. I would actually, in my opinion, this came from the book, I would probably move this and put it here because that way we know all of this information came from this one guy. But we don't have a page, so we just list his name. Again, go down the Works Cited page. What's the first thing you're going to see about this particular source? His name. Source quoted in another source, so an indirect quotation. So you may find this sometimes where, just like you're quoting in your paper from somebody else's work, they may quote from somebody else's work in their papers as well. So you can still use that, but you just need to make it clear that someone is quoting this from somewhere else. For the chronically overweight, states Martin Rogers, a low-carbohydrate diet may provide a viable option for weight loss. So We know that the original person who wrote this is Martin Rogers. However, we found it in Evans on page 46. So that's the way, if you're using a quote from another place, then that's the way you would do that. So we're going to look at way more examples of this, not necessarily today, but again, it's very important. So you must be using these skills to cite all your information. So beyond that, the Works Cited page, be careful when using citation creation programs. I know a lot of people like to do those where you just plug it in there, or even there's an option on Galileo where it will just create a citation for you. Double check them and make sure they're correct, because sometimes those citation machines don't put it out the right way. So you need to make sure, just double check them. They're in the right format and that kind of stuff. Information included on your Works Cited page is going to change depending on the type of source. So if it's a book versus a web page versus a journal versus a blog, you're not going to use blogs, are you? I tricked you. Versus documentary, like, it's going to change. It's going to be different based on that. So when in doubt, refer to the MLA handbook or Purdue OWL for how to format your references. And we will look at that in just a second. This is one of the things that you should really be focusing on, is avoiding plagiarism. So plagiarism is the act of misrepresenting someone else's work as your own. So you're not giving them credit for their information. So if you use any outside information or ideas and don't give credit for the source in your writing, that is considered plagiarism. Now, sometimes you might skip one. You might go, oops, I just forgot to put a parenthetical citation in there. That's still plagiarism. That's why it's very important that you should keep track of all your sources. You should be taking notes over all your sources and make sure that you know where each piece of information came from. Because I didn't know is not going to be a good enough reason to not be accused of plagiarism. Make sure that you are very diligent about this. Penalties for plagiarism are severe and can include failing the assignment or course, and possibly referral to conduct violation penalties through the university. So it could be, usually for the first time that you are accused of plagiarism, you get a 0 for the assignment. The second time, 0 in the class. And then beyond that, that is where the university takes over and starts with their own brand of justice. So when to cite? Pretty much any time, okay? Any idea or fact taken from an outside source must be cited in both the body of your paper and your list of references. In other words, in text, parenthetical citation in your paper and on your Works Cited page. The only exceptions are facts or general statements that are common knowledge, like I mentioned before. So common knowledge facts or general statements are commonly supported by or found in multiple sources. So if it's something you're going to find, it's fairly easy to find in, a general textbook or something like that most anyone would already know, then you don't necessarily have to cite it. But if you're not sure, just cite it. Makes it easier. Plus, that's another source that you can count on your Works Cited page. So another thing you should look at is your paper should be about 20% outside material and 80% your own words. In other words, quoting, paraphrasing, that kind of stuff, about 20%. And 80% of it should be your own analysis. You telling me, why is that quote important? Why is this piece of information important? How does this support my argument? Your paper should not be made up of long blocks of quote. I don't want to see just like quote, 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 paraphrase. Like I don't want to see just outside information. If I wanted to go read those sources, again, I would do that. I want to read what you have to say. I want to see your critical thinking. So when you turn in your papers, the Turnitin score should pop up and tell you like what's the percentage of outside material, and it should not go over 30%. If it's more than 25%, I'm gonna make a note of it for sure and make sure and look at it because it will seem like you are using too much outside information in that case. It should be, again, mostly your writing. So 80% analysis, 20% using your quotes to support your argument. MLA documentation. Now, if you aren't familiar with the Purdue OWL, this is just the basic website here, and it gives you the style and everything like that. And there are videos here. In fact, I watched this one just a little while ago, talking about in-text citations. So you can watch videos that explain some of this stuff, and it also tells you what you're going to need as far as the Works Cited page and that kind of stuff. So you got the formatting and style guide here, and then your Works Cited page. You've got your basic format for the actual sources, and then you have some different, okay, we know. Everybody uses the cookies. So we are going to show you, it shows you how you should format all of your different things in your Works Cited page. So like this is, you know, if it's a book, you're going to actually have to have a lot of information. Books with more than one author, just one author, 2 books by the same author. Then you're going to look at periodicals like journals and that kind of stuff. So if you're looking at peer-reviewed journals and things like that, go away. This will give you the different ways that you are going to format your citations. Electronic sources is probably going to be the one that you focus on a lot because you're finding a lot of this information online, whether it be through Galileo or whatever. So it gives you all these different ways to do that. So make sure you're looking at this and you are following this formatting, because this is, I mean, it's all here for you. It's if you're using an image, if you're using an ebook, if you're using an article, if you're using, you know, this is a scholarly, you know, should definitely be looking at this one here. You know, looking at the different ways to do this. Article from an online database. It's got all the different ways. Tweet. You may want to quote a tweet. Not for this particular assignment, but it might work for some of the other for the research paper maybe. YouTube videos, anything like that. This is going to tell you how to cite all of it. So that is going to be your best source for finding that information. Information that you need for your Works Cited page. In general, you're going to need the writer's name, the title of the work, the source where it was printed, in other words, journal name, a publishing house, you know, if it's a chapter in a book, the title of the book, website name, that kind of stuff, the date it was printed, and the date you accessed it. In other words, when did you look at it? So that's the basic information you're going to need. Now, depending on the different types of sources, you're going to have to you probably need a little bit more information than that too. But again, just look at MLA, look at the Purdue OWL, and it's going to help you out with that. So assignments. Make sure you found your 3 sources so you can start working on that literature review thesis statement, which was going to be due next Friday, and I will model that for you probably. I'll go ahead and have one for for this coming Thursday's video so you can kind of see what's going on. Make sure you do your quiz. That will be live on Thursday and cover everything for this week. Start reviewing PowerPoints from all the lessons so far this semester, not including the ones where we read articles, but stuff when we're talking about like skills from the book and that kind of stuff, because that's what's going to be in your midterm extra credit quiz. There's going to be 10 questions. It's going to cover something from all the information is going to be in the PowerPoints or the videos. So, you know, it's not going to be anything outside that if you didn't come to class, you're not going to know. But make sure you're reviewing those. But again, not looking at the articles. I'm not going to go back for that. But make sure you start looking at those kind of as a way to study, I guess, for the extra credit quiz. And that will be next week. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Goodbye.